Good morning, everyone. This is Honorable Wesley Douglas, and I will be chairing the session for MINI-PLENARY 2 today. I want to welcome all members who have logged on to the virtual MINI-PLENARY session, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome all South Africans who are listening in as well. We will now begin to have a moment of silent
recording in progress.
Thank you. Thank you very much, honourable members. Before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak by the chair. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which is an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. Lastly, when using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Thank you very much. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of Honourable K. Litchfield Chabalala. Let me give over to Honourable Litchfield Chabalala to move the motion.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I rise on behalf of MK Party, the Spear of the Nation, Lerumo Chaba, Umkhonto wesizwe, on a topic that really should not be up for discussion or even debate. It's more a clarion call, that any self-respecting nation would use its foreign policy to primarily protect its people, its nation, its assets. It's very clear that when it comes to visa imposition by Western European countries, we have not been using our foreign policy to protect our people. Honourable Chair, it costs an average South African 3,172 rands to apply for a visa to America. It costs 3,131 for the United Kingdom one. It costs 1,817 rands to go to France. It costs 1,889 for Germany. And oh, by the way, for Germany, even with an official passport, if you're on transit, even for 1 hour, 30 minutes, you need to pay for a visa. You're passing through, you're not entering, you need to pay for a visa. Now, honourable members, this has cost CNN Travel, and this was backed up by Lago Collective, a travel research agency based in London, and SABC flagged the same statistics. They say that in 1 year, 5 months, between 2024 January and May this year, Africa as a whole lost a total of $675 million in unrefunded denied visa fees. That means in 2.5 years, that's easily over R1 billion. The question is, why are we not protecting our people? And why am I using the word protection? Because, honourable members, it costs all these countries that I've counted here nothing to come to South Africa for up to 90 days. They can decide at 4 in the afternoon and at 6 that evening, if they have the money, they can hop on a plane and come to South Africa. I cannot. The fees that I counted here actually exclude courier services, electronic travel authorization, immigration, health, surcharge fees. Now, here's another pertinent question. Has Western Europeans not stolen enough from this continent? From underpaying workers in the mining sector, from not respecting human rights in the mining sector, from illicit financial flows, tax evasion, at which we lose 90 billion rands a year in South Africa. We are still allowing them to steal from ordinary South Africans. Amnesty International released a report in October this year. They've confirmed that the way Western Europe is applying visa restrictions, they are restricting whom they deem as activists to come into Europe. That results in meetings, especially at CSO and community-based level activism. It results in meetings held without our people being represented there because they are denied visa for one thing or the other. Do they have a moral ground really to do this? From slavery to colonization, where is our self-respect? The IS countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, joined by Namibia in May this year, have imposed visa restrictions on Europe. This is supposed to be reciprocal. I thought that's what foreign policy is about. You know, Amazulu at ikote high. You are my friend because you are displaying a friendly attitude towards me. Why has DECO allowed Western European countries to treat us this way when we don't reciprocate? By the way, it's not just the visa process. It's not just about the money. It is the process itself. It's so demeaning. It is so racist. In the American embassy, people are made to wait outside in the elements, whether the heat or the rain. The whole process, it's almost like you are applying to be a citizen. You're just applying for visa to go there for a week sometimes. Now, honorable members, as I said, this is a clarion call. This is not, if we're a self-respecting nation, it's not supposed to be party divisive. It's not supposed to be a debate. It's not supposed to be grandstanding. We are just supposed to come together as this parliament and say, in protection of our people, we move that from January next year or May next year, we are going to do the same and reciprocate and impose visa requirements on Western European countries. And we don't in MK Party want to hear this thing of, oh, we need them because they must come here for foreign direct investment. Listen here. Europe specializes, there's a map, look for it on Google. What Europe produces is manufactured goods. Where's the raw material? It's in Africa. So who needs, we can stay with our raw material. What will they produce? Who needs the other more than the other? They need us more. Imposing visas on Western Europe will never stop them coming. Namibia is a direct example. They did it from May this year. Have Western Europeans stopped going to Namibia? They go, they pay for the visa. So what's wrong with us? I think we have a government in place, really, that do not care for our people. And we are urging them as MK Party, start caring for our people and do what is right. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Litchfield Tabalala. The next speaker will be from the ANC, Honorable M.S. Muela. Thank you. You may take the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable members, allow me to begin by recognizing that the questions of mobility, migration, and visa policy got to do with every heart of how a nation positions itself in global arena. In a world characterized by shifting geopolitical alignments, intensified competition for skills and investment, and rapidly changing norms of cross-border movement, the decisions we take as lawmakers speak directly to our foreign policy, identity, and values we project. Today's debate, honorable members, is therefore not merely about administrative procedures at ports of entry. It is about how a sovereign state assesses fairness, protects the interests of its citizens abroad, and simultaneously advances economic opportunity through principled engagement with the international community. From a foreign policy standpoint, honorable members, issues of mobility and migration must always be understood within the larger context of national interest. Regional integration, economic diplomacy, and protection of South Africa's global reputation. Visa regimes are not neutral administrative tools. They are instruments of statecraft that signal openness, trust, alignment, and in some cases, strategic dissatisfaction. For this reason, policy choices in this area must be calibrated with care to avoid unintended outcomes that may undermine economic opportunities, diplomatic relations, or continental commitments. Honorable members, it is important to ground this discussion in the principle of parity. Reciprocity is a long-standing norm in international relations. Sovereign nations expect to be treated in a manner that is broadly equitable and respectful. We, the are clear and consistent patterns of unequal treatment, particularly where South African travelers face erroneous requirements that are not reflective of risk or evidence. There is a legitimate expectation for such imbalances to be raised with relevant states. However, honorable members, reciprocity is a tool, not an ideology. It is not automatically invoked, nor should it be deployed without careful assessment of impacts. Our foreign policy framework draws in a balance between asserting respect internationally and advancing national priorities such as trade, tourism, investment, and knowledge exchange. Any action on visa parity must therefore be informed by this strategic balance, not by symbolism or reactive politics. A second consideration is the practical effect that visa regimes have on our domestic sectors, particularly on tourism, higher education, and business mobility. While discussions of reciprocity must uphold fairness, they must also guard against decisions that advantageously restrict South Africa's economic gains. We have lived this experience before, honorable members. In 2015, South Africa introduced stringent immigration regulations, including the requirement that minors entering the country must carry an unabridged birth certificate, with the intention of protecting children against trafficking was legitimate. The implementation had previously consequences for tourism. Tower operators reported cancellation, airlines raised concern about boarding delays, and visitors numbers from key markets such as China dropped significantly. The World Travel and Tourism Council and local industry bodies estimated losses of up to 7.5 billion, honorable members, with job impacts across the hospitality value chain. Eventually, following sustained engagement from the sector and intergovernmental review, the regulations were amended. This episode serves as a cautionary example for today's discussion. It demonstrates that well-intentioned regulatory decisions must always be tested against practical realities, evidence-based impact assessments, and the voices of affected economic sectors. If we are to consider reciprocity measures, they must be shaped through similar diligence. Honorable members, the second pillar of this reflection, reflection is diplomatic coherence. South Africa's foreign policy rests on relationships, bilateral, regional, and multilateral. Decisions about mobility must therefore be aligned with existing partnerships and ongoing negotiations. Where concerns exist about discriminatory practices, this should first be addressed through structured diplomatic channels, high-level engagement, technical working groups, and the mechanism available within multilateral bodies such as the African Union, Commonwealth, and the United Nations. Many countries have successfully negotiated improved mobility arrangements through such platforms without resorting to punitive reciprocity measures. Furthermore, honorable members, visa regimes are often shaped by risk assessment, domestic political considerations, and administrative capacities in partner states. It is therefore essential to distinguish between policies that are intentionally exclusionary and those that rise from domestic governance constraints. A calculated diplomatic approach ensures that we respond proportionately. The third pillar is regional leadership. South Africa is a member of SADC and a champion of African integration. Our commitment to the African continental free trade area, the single African air transport market, and the AU's broader free movement agenda place a responsibility on us to model openness and facilitate intra-African mobility. Any adjustment to our visa policies must preserve the momentum towards a more integrated continent. This does not preclude engaging Western states on issues of fairness. It simply means that our actions should not unintentionally create barriers that contradict our continental aspiration or reduce South Africa's role as a hub for African diplomacy, trade, and tourism. Another critical dimension is the national security perspective. Visa policies are instruments for managing legitimate risk, including terrorism, trafficking, organized crime, and irregular migration. Any consideration of reciprocity must therefore engage with the security cluster to assess operational capacity and cross-border implications. Improvised or overly broad visa restriction may strain already stretched systems, reduced intelligence cooperation with key partners, or intensive unsafe travel practices. However, security concerns should not be used as a blanket justification for one-sided burdens on South Africans. We partners impose stringent requirements without transparent evidence-based reasoning. South Africa is fully entitled to raise these concerns, but the response must always enhance rather than diminish our domestic security environment. In conclusion, honorable members, the discussion before us is not about rejecting or accepting any motion outright, but about mapping a responsible pathway that upholds fairness while protecting our diplomatic, economic, and security priorities. A careful structured review of visa inequalities, accompanied by targeted diplomatic engagements and informed by past lessons, especially from tourism impacts, while ensure that South Africa responds with positive principle and foresight. I thank you, honorable members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Moela. The next speaker will be from MK, Honorable Z.E. Mtetwa. You may take the floor. Thank you.
Greetings, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity, and greetings to our fellow members of Parliament and to our listeners in South Africa. Let me start by actually retracing who are these white people who are now imposing actually visa restriction on us. First of all, King Somhlolo of the Swaziland Kingdom, he had a premonition about the arrival of white people carrying a book and a coin, and he traced them, and he sent a delegation to Bloemfontein today to go and see these people without actually meeting them physically, but he already described the type of people who are coming into our land. Furthermore, King Tingswai of the Mtetwa Kingdom, around 1805 and 06, he actually encountered the first white man, Dr. Cohen, who was a military sergeant who was en route from Newcastle to Delgoa Bay, today Maputo, and he was riding a horse carrying a gun, and he was representing one of the Westerners who were coming and roaming around in our land at that time without a visa. He just came. And then we had also King Shaka of the Zulu Kingdom in 1824. He actually met Sir Henry Finn and Farewell in his palace, and they promised him, and they told a lie, that they want to subject themselves under his rule and stay with his people. And furthermore, I also note the fact that before 1957, in Africa's first independence of Ghana, there was a meeting of Europeans which said that let's stage puppet regimes in Africa so that Africans think that they are free, whereas they are still continuing maintaining the same status quo and the rulership of the same establishment done by the former colonizers. And then furthermore, in South Africa, we have a book called South Africa Incorporated, Oppenheimer Empire. Why I'm quoting this book, published in 1988, is because we are finding a family that is actually traced back to Germany, which was Edward Oppenheimer, who gave birth to Ernest Oppenheimer, who gave birth to Harry Oppenheimer, who gave birth to Nicky Oppenheimer, who gave birth to Jonathan Oppenheimer. This is a family over 100 years dominating the South African economy under pretense that it is our government that is actually controlling the economy. Against that background, let me then state the following. I'm quoting: in 1835, Lord Macaulay said in British Parliament, "I have traveled across the length and breadth of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such a world I have seen in this country, such a moral values. People of such caliber do not think we would ever conquer that country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore I propose that we replace her old ancient education system, her culture, for if the Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation." Furthermore, I'm quoting Jacques René Chirac, former president of France. He said the following: "Centuries we looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that Africans are good for nothing. In the name of religion, we destroyed their culture. And after being made rich, and then we now steal their brains through miseducation and propaganda to prevent them from enacting black retribution against us. After 190 years later, we became exactly what Sir Lord Macaulay have done against us as Africans. This topic is premised upon the Ubuntu principle that when you are in need as a country, you can go to your neighbors, those who are closer and far, to get that which you need or trade it with what you have. The problem started when the Western countries realized that Africans have minerals and vegetation and good climate. This necessitated that they get those articles at no cost to them. They started to have explorers who brought intelligence that our kingdoms are having certain weaknesses which they could exploit. In 1884 November until 1885 February, the European kingdom, including American president, they sat down and crafted a plan to invade Africa and convert them to colonies of exploitation, colonies of settlement, colonies of contestation, according to the culture and languages of the colonial masters. When their countries were fully developed, they started putting visa system to restrict entry into their countries. They enter freely in Africa, but Africans are put under scrutiny and payments of unrefundable visa fees. These countries are dependent on Africa for their raw materials. In 1 year, these visa charges ran to $1 billion. This is how they continue to make money through our countries, as if the minerals they took are not enough. They agreed that they need to make sure Africa doesn't industrialize, because the first world country's welfare is dependent on Africa. To win this battle is that when they impose restriction on visas that are issued, we must then respond as Africa by putting a ban on raw materials that leave our countries without being beneficiated in the country of origin, so that they will benefit through job creation due to industries that will be started in our countries, from primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. Furthermore, we should also unite to establish an African currency of international settlement. We can also ask our mineral reserve, which are backing their currencies, to be strong. Our home affairs must change their immigration policy and trade policies. This will help to protect sovereignty of the state. The foreign policies must defend the interests of the country more than pleasing the former and continuing colonial masters. We also need to call on all Africa Kingdom Conference to reverse everything that was agreed in the Berlin Conference. Furthermore, we must restore our jurisdictional right. This means the laws that are used in our African states are not organic to the natives of our countries. This means we must change the laws to be codified according to our cultural heritage. This will stop any convention that sits and make decisions for Africans without them having any say. We will also take ourselves out of any convention that exploit Africans. We are going to establish a court institution according to our own cultures, where the word of our native leaders is final. We also call upon Africans in the global diaspora to come back home, those who feel that they are being abused abroad. We will retrieve all our artifacts that were stolen by these countries, which are now displayed in their museum, and it's making money for them. We will also pay attention to our citizens who are not patriotic enough to go to the world superpowers to sell our country negatively, to give them an uneven advantage in our country. We will reverse any exploration of our minerals by foreign countries without reciprocating with other materials, which is short in our economic circulation. We will calculate an opportunity cost against all countries that exploited us and charge them to return all the equivalent values they extract of our countries, or alternatively leave our countries so that we can explore our minerals to benefit our national agenda. We will bring an end to any attempt to promote white supremacy over Africans and deal with any notion that promote black mediocrity. We will deal with the type of leadership that are serving the interests of colonial masters The days are over for those who are elevated and funded by white regime fronting with our black leaders. We will take advantage of the Africa Free Trade Agreement space. This will ensure the reciprocity of goods and services in our continent. We will not sign any trade agreement that doesn't give equal, if not equitable, benefit to our countries. We will reject any downgrading institution which lower our economic performance so that they bring stringent measures to give us loans based on our mineral exploration. We will deal with the media houses who promote lies in our countries to serve interests that will mark down and talk down our countries in the global communities. We will use our land for the benefit of our tribes as opposed to private individuals who come to oppress our people by controlling our economies to take advantage of monopoly of our economies. We will respond to any country that ban us by building internal capacity economically so that when we are ready and self-sufficient, we'll trade with the world at our own terms. Let me close by addressing what the Rothschild godfather said. He said, I don't care who runs the world, whoever that is, he will control them. No wonder most of the reserve banks of the world are controlled by the descendants of the Rothschild. What does that tell you? We think that our leaders are actually independent and are voted by our people, but it's very clear they are being stage managed by those who control their economies. It is against that background that we are saying these visa restrictions are just part of the exploitation that they've been doing to us for the longest time, and we've been quiet.
Honourable Member, thank you. Your time has expired. Thank you, Honourable Mdetwa. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next speaker will be from the DA, Honourable Bowman. You may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. We meet today to consider a draft resolution brought forward by the MK Party, a resolution that claims to defend the dignity of South Africans abroad. But dignity cannot be defended with selective truth. It cannot be defended with political amnesia, and it certainly cannot be defended by those who helped break the very systems that protect our citizenship. South Africans face visa restrictions not because the world discriminates against us, but because our identity and border systems were compromised from within. Our passport did not lose its strength because foreign governments suddenly decided to target us. It lost strength because corruption hollowed out home affairs, criminal syndicates infiltrated the National Population Register, and identity documents were sold like merchants' ass. We have a more recent history lesson. This occurred during what our country now recognizes as the 9 wasted years, led, ironically, by the very individual who now leads the MK Party presenting this draft resolution. I will reference this once because the irony of the MKP bringing this proposal cannot be ignored. If this House is serious about dignity, then accountability must come before rhetoric. If we want reciprocity from other nations, then we must first rebuild credibility within our own systems. The Lubisi report laid out, without ambiguity, how syndicates, including those operating from inside Home Affairs, engineered fraudulent late birth registrations, created duplicate identities, and issued South African passports to non-citizens who had never provided biometrics, never appeared before an official, and never qualified for any documentation.
Honourable Bowman, may I just ask you to pause for a second? We have a point of order. Could I ask Honourable Skosana, what is your point of order? Honourable Skosana, your hand is up.
Ngithokoze mgcini sihlalo. Okhuluma nje la akakhuluma iqiniso. I9 wasted years akhuluma ngayo umkhonto wesizwe.
Honourable Member, this is not a point of order. Could I ask you to refrain? Thank you very much. It's not a point of order.
That is misleading the House.
No, that's fine. I'm ruling on it now. From what I've heard, it's not misleading the House, but we will note your point and we will continue with the speaker. Thank you very much. Honourable Bowman, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. These were not administrative errors. They were deliberate criminal operations, and the world noticed. Because when a state cannot guarantee the integrity of its own documents, no country on earth will treat those documents as credible. Honourable Chair, even our core biometric system, HANIS, was compromised during that era. HANIS was designed to safeguard fingerprints, facial images, and identity records, yet it too became contaminated by fraudulent late registrations and duplicate identities inserted by syndicates. The reforms underway now aim to repair HANIS and integrate it into a secure, modern digital ID platform that cannot be manipulated. At the center of this modernization is the introduction of the digital system and the complete overhaul of the National Population Register, work that restores the foundational integrity of our identity system. And let us be clear, this is not an experimental policy, it is global best practice. Estonia operates the world's most secure and advanced digital identity system. India runs the largest biometric ID program in the world, with more than 1 billion people enrolled. Singapore integrates digital identity across immigration, healthcare, finance, and government services. And here on our own continent, Rwanda is already implementing a national biometric identity system. South Africa is not venturing into the unknown. We are finally catching up with systems trusted by the world's most secure jurisdictions. Once the digital system and population register overhaul are complete, South Africa will introduce a new highly secure biometric passport. And crucially, other nations will be invited to inspect and validate the system, because this is how you rebuild trust. Not through dramatic draft resolutions, but through verifiable institutional integrity. And while these reforms advance, the cleanup is already producing results. Since July 2024, 54 officials across Home Affairs and the Border Management Authority have been dismissed for fraud, corruption, and misconduct. Working with the SIU, Hawks, and SAPS, 9 criminal convictions have been secured, with offenders receiving sentences of up to 18 years. In March 2025, the Border Management and Immigration Anti-Corruption Forum was launched to disrupt the criminal networks that have exploited our borders for far too long. This is what real reform looks like: measurable, disciplined, and essential. Honourable Chair, the MKP's draft resolution demands reciprocity from Western nations. But reciprocity without credibility is not foreign policy. It is political performance dressed up as statecraft. You cannot demand equal treatment while ignoring the internal failures that created unequal treatment. You cannot insist on dignity abroad while refusing to confront the corruption that eroded dignity at home. The Democratic Alliance supports genuine reforms. Reforms that restore the integrity of our passport, strengthen border management, modernize identity systems, and protect South Africans wherever they travel. These reforms, not symbolic motions, will return visa-free travel to our citizens. These reforms, not revisionist narratives, will restore the strength of South African passport. Let us tell South Africans the truth. South Africa will not win back global respect because we pass a draft resolution. We will win it back because we are fixing the system that lost that respect. We will not secure reciprocity because we demand it. We'll secure it because we have institutions that deserve it. And we will not restore dignity through political performance. We will restore it by restoring integrity to the state itself. Honourable Chair, this draft resolution will not rebuild our passport. What will rebuild it is the hard disciplined work of repairing HANIS, modernizing our identity systems, securing our borders, and removing corruption. Work that the DA is driving and work that South Africans can trust. Because dignity is not demanded, dignity is earned. And we will restore dignity to South African passport by restoring integrity to the South African state. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Bowman. The next speaker will be from the EFF, Honourable Mukhale. You may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable also will take the debate.
Please go ahead.
Can I continue, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Chair, it would be amiss of us if we do not place it on record that the undue influence which led to the removal of a draft resolution tabled by Honorable Vuyo Zungula, calling for a debate on rand manipulation and an investigation through an ad hoc committee, undermines the legitimacy of this parliament. There are powerful and untouchable individuals in this country, Trevor Manuel being one of them. Maria Ramos, the former CEO of ABSA, presided over an institution where criminals engage in currency manipulation. To this day, not a single person has been arrested. It remains a white-collar crime committed by white people who behave as though they are above the law. We will not retreat. We will continue to bring this matter before this House because the case of rand manipulation will not be swept under the carpet under the EFF. But today, Chair, we debate the manner in which white former colonizers continue to discriminate against the very people they once subjugated. The UK, parts of Europe, the right-wing United States of America, and other reactionary states have made it clear that they do not want Africans and people of the global south visiting their countries. It is not speculation, it is a lived reality. Let us be reminded, Chair, and the people of South Africa, when the President and Commander-in-Chief of the EFF was invited by the African postgraduate students in the UK to share his views, his ideology, and his belief, and his reflection on the struggle of economic freedom and the need for African unity, he did not invite himself. He was not traveling to protest. There was no risk of public disturbance. It was a short academic visit, not more than 3 days, to meet African students in an intellectual forum. Yet, Chair, the British government denied him a visa on frivolous and political motivated grounds. They denied him a visa because they do not like the EFF's principles and unwavering solidarity with the people of Palestine, who remain under bombardment by the racist apartheid state of Israel. They denied him a visa because he was going to speak about the African unity with young intellectuals, the future leaders of this continent, bankers, investors, economic scientists, physicians, and all categories of future leaders, the cream de la cream of the African continent, and they refused him a visa. The British government denied him a visa because the President and Commander-in-Chief of the EFF continues to speak truth to power. He continues to confront the neo-colonial power structure that governs international relations. They did not want African leaders in the diaspora to hear the message of the President of the EFF. House Chair, what was even more disappointing is that some members of this very House laughed at this injustice. They failed to appreciate the fact that what we were dealing with is neo-colonialism. We are dealing with structural racism. We are dealing with an entrenched hatred for Africans, particularly Black Africans. Many members thought this was simply about the EFF president failing to recognize that one day the same discriminatory practices may be used against them. The hard truth is that these former colonizers want Africa's resources, but they do not want African people. They are comfortable with mining our minerals, extracting our wealth, and benefiting from the African labor, but they remain disgusted by our presence in their streets. This is why we must take a firm and clear position. Any country that imposes discriminatory visa requirements on South Africans, particularly Africans, must be met with reciprocal measures. Other African countries have already begun doing this. This requires decisive leadership, not cowardice who waits until it is too late. Unfortunately, House Chair, President Cyril Ramaphosa does not possess the courage, conviction, or capacity to defend South Africans. When President of the EFF was denied the visa, despite being a member of Parliament and carrying an official passport, this government should have been the first to stand up and object. We know that some members of the executive may not attend the next G20 summit because the racist Donald Trump, if re-elected, may refuse them visas. This will not be a surprise. We are even uncertain whether Bafana will be granted this. We remain hopeful that Africa and the global south in time will be respected. But our people must understand something important. You do not need to go to London or Paris to be considered well-traveled. Visit Lagos, visit Abuja, visit Accra, Lusanda, and the majestic Victoria Falls. Travel to the mountain kingdom of Lesotho, explore Nairobi and Addis Ababa. Let us travel in Africa. Let us deepen our bonds with our own people. Let us build an Africa that is confident, united, and apologetically proud of itself. I thank you, Hafshe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mohale. The next speaker will be from the IFB, Honorable Mhlongo. You may have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The matter before this House compels us to weigh the principles of fairness and reciprocity against the practical realities of our economy and international partnership. The proposal to impose reciprocal visa requirement on Western states raises valid concern about dignity, equality, and South Africa's right to expect the same treatment we extend to others. Yet, it also requires us to consider the broader consequences for tourism, investment, and our role within the rapidly shifting global environment. Reciprocity is undeniably a principle of fairness in international relations. Citizens of South Africa should not face restrictive visa requirements while our country allows unrestricted entry to their nationals. Countries such as Namibia, Nigeria, and Mali have recently implemented reciprocal visa policies to assert their sovereignty and encourage equitable treatment abroad. However, we must not view these actions in isolation. Any policy must be assessed in proportion to its impact on its citizens, foreign investment, and broader diplomatic relationships. We must also consider the economic consequences. Statistics South Africa reported in February 2025 that international arrivals reached nearly 9 million in 2024, up with 5.1% from the previous year, with 76% of visitors coming from the African continent. The World Travel and Tourism Council further notes that tourism now contributes 8.8% to South Africa's GDP and supports 1.68 million jobs, with strong recoveries from key markets such as the United States, Germany, Brazil, and China. Tourism remains one of the few sectors demonstrating consistent resilience in an otherwise challenging global climate. Introducing visa requirement for Western countries without careful planning risks discouraging high-spending visitors from key markets. As Namibia's experience has shown, even a modest decline in arrivals can translate into tens of millions of rands in lost revenue, placing additional strains on communities already facing economic pressure. The challenge before us is therefore to find a middle ground. South Africa can assert its rights without undermining economic opportunities. Flexible visa mechanisms such as electronic visas on arrival, and streamlined online application allow the state to maintain border control while keeping travel accessible. Countries like India and Mauritius have successfully implemented such systems while taking reciprocity into consideration. Continuous monitoring of visitors' number, revenue, and international diplomatic relations will also be essential to avoid unintended consequences. Honorable Chairperson, this debate reminds us that the international policy is really binary. While South Africa has the right to insist on equitable treatment, we must carefully weigh sovereignty against practical economic consideration and global perception. By implementing a flexible, principled, and data-driven visa regime, we can assert reciprocity, protect our citizens abroad, and safeguard one of the most important economic sectors. In conclusion, this is a question of balance between fairness and pragmatism, between the principle and performance. Let us approach it with both courage and caution, ensuring that South Africa's policy reflects our sovereignty while sustaining our economic and diplomatic interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mhlongo. The next speaker will be from the PA. Does the PA have a speaker? If not, we'll continue to the Freedom Front Plus. Does the Freedom Front Plus have a speaker? If not, we'll move on to Action SA. Honorable MP Kobe, you may have the floor. Action SA, are you there?
Thank you very much, House Chair. Yes, I am here. Greetings to you, honourable members and South Africans at large. Honourable House Chair, South Africa's foreign policy must always reflect a single principle, that our national interest is non-negotiable. It is therefore common cause that our government is obliged to ensure that it advances global affairs that enhance opportunity for South Africans and affirms our sovereignty on equal terms with fellow nations. As Action SA, we believe that South Africa must continue to be committed to multilateral cooperation, global trade, and the consistent defense of human rights. Fundamentally, South Africa should engage all regions as a partner, a bridge builder, and a contributor to international stability, not as a bystander to policy asymmetry that disadvantages our citizens or undermines our interests. Honourable House Chair, diplomacy is founded on mutual respect, and the most credible expression of respect between sovereign equals is reciprocity in practice. South Africa extends considerable openness to many countries, particularly in travel access. That posture has historically enabled travel flows, business engagement, academic exchange, and strong people-to-people ties. These outcomes we value, and they serve our economy and our global relevance. Yet, when mobility rules operate disproportionately in one direction, where visiting citizens enjoy seamless access into South Africa, while South Africans face significant entry friction in return, the principle of reciprocity becomes a legitimate question for scrutiny. It cannot be assumed that a partnership is equitable when administrative burden, cost, and restriction are not equally shared. Visa policy, House Chair, is not an abstract issue. It drives economic outcomes. Tourism sectors globally respond to mobility incentives and deterrence. Trade investment conversations depend fundamentally on the ability of business delegations to move without undue imbalance. Our students and professionals operate in international networks where mobility rules can either expand our participation or quietly limit competitiveness. Fellow South Africans, this discussion must not be framed as hostility towards any nation or region, and nor should it be interpreted as such. A proposal for reciprocal visa measures must therefore be assessed through the lens of strategy, economic benefit, competitiveness, and fairness for South Africans who travel, trade, study, and work within the global system. South Africa must enter mobility discussions with clarity, not to distance ourselves from global partners, but to reinforce the credibility of cooperation through balance. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now call on the next few parties to see if they have speakers. The next part will be the ACDP. Is there a speaker from the ACDP? No? Then we'll move on to the UDM.
Chairperson, Siyabulela Ndikhona, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Well, indeed, Honorable Little Chabalala is quite correct in saying there's no fairness in this process. Our people regularly are faced with extremely high visa fees, excessive documentation demands, and processes, as she has mentioned, that are truly, truly demeaning and very intrusive when people apply for visas to countries that were considered to have established trade and bilateral relationships with. Okwesibini, aba bantu bamane bethetha ngeba ivisa yathi bathi bamhlophe bana dual citizenship. Dala sinanazela lapha esithubeni sihamba nabo ngento zeparlamente bavele bakhuphe ivisa zabo not passports zabo zamanye amazwe. Kuba kaloku bona ezindleko azibafumani lento bezasifundekela ngento engachuzanga besicela ngeprocesses that are lengthy kuba ngumuntu omnyama lo unengxaki okufuneka ebhatale lento ngumuntu omnyama lo ungafunwayo ngalamazwe kodwa bayayifuna imali yethu ifana naxa besuka apha besiza ku-official visits eSouth Africa thina sifika phana sikhululiswe ufumanise into yoba ungabuzwa ne-DNA test xa ungena kula mazwe ube uhamba nge-official passport. Thina xa befika apha sibatreat ngathi ziigumkani neegumkanikazi befika kwiipalamente zethu nakwii-airports zethu, sibakhupha kumacala zababonisa isidima nesithozela. Linene elithi siyabhideka ke ngoku i-ANC xa izawuthetha about this very tiered approach that it must be followed. Of course we agree with that because i-strategy sibalulekile in how we address this process. Ibihlele ntoni ixesha elide kangaka because the tiered approach i-ANC ethetha ngayo is an opportunity in particular for diplomatic engagement at a bilateral level to say, okay, how do we address our mutual concerns insofar as these matters are concerned? How do we facilitate the movement of people between our different nations so that ingabi ngathi thina samkelekanga kubo benanazela begcwala apha oko? Yes, indeed, there needs to be consideration of the sovereignty on the one hand, balancing those interests, as well as making sure that we take into account practical economic considerations insofar as this decision is concerned. But what is clear is that the status quo cannot be allowed to remain, that there needs to be a review of the current process. And ngezo zizathu, we welcome this motion and sizayixhasa naxa isiya eHousing uqiniseke ukuthi the entire system is actually reviewed so that singabi ne-trade partners ne-countries that we have bilateral agreements with extort imali xa kufuneka size kuzo bebona besiza phana anytime befuna. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Next, we will have a speaker from RISE. Is the speaker from RISE available? No? Then we'll move on to Bosa. Is Bosa available? No? We will then move on to ATM. Honourable Marawu.
Thank you very much, House Chair. We must register the point that as ATM will never give up on persuading this House on rand manipulation debate. However, ATM rises in strong support of the principle underpinning this draft resolution. For far too long, South Africa and many nations of the Global South have tolerated a glaring imbalances in how our citizens are treated when traveling to so-called Western democracies. While they enjoyed visa-free entry into our country, our people endured humiliating, protracted, and often hostile visa processes that undermine our dignity and our sovereignty. This is not partnership, it is inequality masquerading as diplomacy. Reciprocity is a foundational principle of international relations. It is neither radical nor confrontational, it is the norm. Yet, when Africans demand equality, fairness, and mutual respect, it is framed as provocation. The ATM rejects this double standard. We assert clearly South Africa is a sovereign state, not a subordinate. Our people deserve the same respect that our government extends to others. In fact, recent conduct by the United States underscores exactly why this resolution is necessary. The tone, language, and posture adopted in relation to South Africa during the G20, fueled by misinformation, manufactured crisis, and the reckless peddling of lies about so-called white genocide, were nothing short of hostile. It implies that South Africa is some sub-state incapable of agency, unworthy of respect, and in need of supervision. This behavior is unacceptable. It violates the spirit of diplomacy, undermines our democracy, and treats our sovereignty as optional. We must respond firmly to any nation that attempts to belittle or delegitimize our country through narrative rooted in prejudice and political opportunism. Imposing reciprocal visa restriction is not an act of hostility. It is an act of self-respect. It sends a clear message that South Africa refuses to be a perpetual recipient of condescending policies rooted in our outdated colonial attitude. We cannot continue to smile politely while security risk merely for holding an African passport. We cannot accept a world where our people must prove their worthiness while others walk freely in our borders. Honourable members, this proposal aligns with the ATM's core principles, dignity, justice, and the restoration of Africa's place in global affairs. It also aligns with the broader continental calls for equal treatment of African nations. If Western partners truly value us, they must demonstrate it through policies that respect our people as equals. We are not advocating isolation, we are advocating fairness. We remain open to cooperation, trade, investment, and mutual exchange, but on equitable terms. Therefore, ATM supports this motion and urges Parliament to advance measures that protect our sovereignty, uphold our dignity, ensure that no nation treats South Africa as anything less than an equal on the world stage. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the ANC, Honourable Kumgaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. Our engagements with communities and stakeholders continually remind us that questions of mobility and reciprocity are ultimately questions about how South Africa is positioned and respected in the world. These concerns speak to the heart of our foreign policy, which is a policy rooted in fairness, mutual respect, and the pursuit of balanced partnerships. As a nation that recently demonstrated global leadership through the successful hosting of the G20, we must ensure that our interactions with international partners reflect the same principles of equality and dignity that we advance on global platforms. South Africa's foreign policy has long been anchored in the principles of sovereignty, equality among nations, and rules-based international order. These principles guide the way that the country manages its diplomatic relations, engages global partners, and approaches issues of mobility and migration. The question of visa reciprocity must therefore be located squarely within this broader foreign policy framework, because the movement of people is a central component of how states relate, cooperate, and define the balance of obligation between them. In the global diplomatic environment, visa regimes are not merely administrative tools, they are expressions of the political relationship between states. They reflect levels of trust, historical patterns of engagement, and assessments of mutual benefit. When South Africa evaluates the visa conditions imposed on its citizens by Western states, it is engaging in a foreign policy assessment, one that weighs fairness, national dignity, and reciprocity while ensuring that strategic partnerships are preserved and strengthened. Honourable members, the experiences shared by many South Africans, whether students, academics, entrepreneurs, artists, or ordinary travelers, remind us that mobility is not just a policy matter, but a real part of people's hopes and plans. When our citizens engage with certain Western visa systems, they often tell us how smoother processes, clearer communication, and lighter paperwork would make a meaningful difference in their journeys. These everyday stories give us a clear mandate to work towards a future where our people are welcomed with the same openness, trust, and courtesy that we extend to visitors right here at home in Mzansi. We must therefore ask ourselves, how do we advance a system of mobility that supports the aspirations of our people while continuing to nurture the strong bilateral partnerships that remain vital to our national interest? In raising this, honourable members, it must be acknowledged that South Africa cannot remain indifferent to global patterns where powerful states increasingly use visa regimes as instruments of geopolitical influence. Reciprocity in many jurisdictions becomes a practical tool to rebalance dynamics, encourage dialogue, and signal that mobility must be a two-way street. We must consider whether adopting certain reciprocal principles may in fact strengthen our diplomatic hand rather than weaken it. But it is equally important to emphasize that any policy shift must be rooted in evidence, proportionality, and constructive engagement, not in populism or emotional reaction. We must guard against approaches that place South Africa's developmental and diplomatic interests at risk. Honourable members, it is crucial also that this issue within our broader foreign policy orientation is recognized. South Africa remains committed to multilateralism, progressive internationalism, and partnerships across the global South and BRICS, and also our African continent. These partnerships are grounded in principles of mutual benefit and solidarity. By contrast, some Western partners have historically engaged with African countries from a position of asymmetry. Visa regimes remain one of the spaces where this asymmetry expresses itself most visibly. Yet, the response to such an asymmetry must continue to be characterized by respectful dialogue. The current discussion offers an opportunity to say, let us re-examine the balance, let us strive for fairness, and let us use diplomacy to advance equitable mobility for our citizens. Honourable members and fellow South Africans, part of contextualizing this matter is recognizing that Western nations remain important partners in trade, development assistance, tourism, education, and scientific cooperation. The conversation before us must therefore unfold in a way that defends national dignity while preserving constructive diplomatic engagement. South Africa's strength has always been its ability to balance principle with pragmatism. This is why, when considering reciprocity, it must be emphasized that the intention is not to escalate tensions or undermine long-standing partnerships. The intention is to ensure that South Africans enjoy the same respect and treatment that visitors from those states receive here. If South Africa offers visa waivers or simplified entry to certain partners, it is reasonable to expect parity or at a minimum meaningful dialogue toward fairness. International trends are shifting after COVID-19. Many countries reassess their visa regimes in line with public health, security concerns, and changing migration patterns. Unfortunately, in some cases, these reassessments hardened the mobility barriers faced by citizens of developing countries. It is therefore appropriate for South Africa to evaluate where its citizens stand within this evolving landscape. As I conclude, honorable members, the dignity of South African citizens is non-negotiable. When individuals feel that their movement is unjustifiably restricted or that they are treated unfairly in foreign visa systems, it affects the country's broader sense of global respect and belonging. Addressing these concerns is therefore essential not only for individuals but for the nation as a whole. However, it must be done with an appreciation of the diplomatic landscape. South Africa's credibility in global affairs is rooted in its ability to advance fairness while maintaining openness to dialogue. The country has consistently championed cooperation, multilateralism, and equality among nations. Honorable members, this debate is not about confrontation, but about balance. It is not about shutting doors, but ensuring that doors open both ways. It is not about rejecting partnership, but also strengthening it in terms that honor the dignity of our people. The path forward must be grounded in diplomacy. South Africa has strong channels for bilateral engagement with Western partners, and these should be fully utilized to raise concern about visa asymmetry. And our platforms such as the AU and BRICS and the UN can also support efforts to promote equitable global mobility. In closing, honorable members and fellow South Africans, this matter calls for sober reflection, strategic thinking, and a commitment to fairness. Any approach must protect the rights of South Africans while sustaining the partnerships that contribute to the country's development and international standing. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next party to speak will be from Al-Jamar. Is the speaker for Al-Jamar in the House? If not, we'll move to the NCC. Is there a speaker for NCC? UAT? Is there a speaker for UAT? Good? Is there a speaker for Good? If not, we'll move on to the DA, Honourable C. Ruiz. You may have the floor.
Thank you, House Chair. 7 out of the 10 top countries from which our tourists are from, North America and Western European countries, where our top tourist comes from, with over 1.3 million tourists in 2024. This puts an estimated 100,000 South African jobs at risk. So we must reject this job-killing resolution or face thousands of job losses in our tourism industry. Every government has the right and the responsibility to decide who enters its borders. Visa policies are designed to manage national security, control migration, and protect citizens from threats. The toughest part about leadership is addressing challenges that have been caused by years and years of neglect, and the pressure to turn them around quickly. People rightly want action. People want change, and have been waiting for it for too long. Real lasting change doesn't come from sticking on a populist plaster, but requires a systems thinking approach. What system resulted in this state of affairs? Who are the beneficiaries? And how do we change the underlying system so that all South Africans benefit from it, and not just a politically connected elite? In our case, South Africa's immigration and visa policies have long been shaped by the reality of porous borders and corruption within home affairs. Together, these weaknesses have created a risk that foreign nationals may enter South Africa irregularly, obtain South African documents fraudulently, and then use these documents to travel abroad and attempt to settle there. Honourable Bowman detailed the issue of corruption that has plagued home affairs, peaking in the 9 wasted years. Regarding our borders, we inherited a fundamentally underfunded border management authority. The BMA has neither the manpower nor sufficient funding to plug the gaps with force multipliers such as drones to deal with the sheer volume and complexity of movement we now face across the Southern African region. Weak border coordination allowed regular or irregular migration and untraceable entry, and combined with a syndicate operating within Home Affairs, created a fertile environment for document fraud. And when that happens, the world loses trust in our travel documents. And the immediate result is tighter visa requirements for our citizens. That is why South Africans often face long, expensive visa processes to visit Western nations, because of the loss of trust that our travel documents are genuine, not so-called discrimination. In the past year, under the leadership of Minister Leon Schreiber, these risks to our national security and the trust in our passport system are being aggressively addressed. For the first time in many years, South Africa is confronting the root causes of our weakened passport credibility. Through the Systems Modernization Reform Program at Home Affairs, the Minister has begun to close these holes in the system. The strengthening of the BMA is well underway. Despite severe budget constraints, the BMA has rolled out a 5-pillar strategy, combining intelligence gathering, visible policing, rapid response, investigations, and interagency communications to punch well above its weight. The results over the festive season were staggering, with 3 times increase in the successful prevention of illegal border crossings during the festive season. These are not small steps. They are the foundation of a secure identity regime, the kind of system that will allow us to regain the trust of other nations. Challenges remain, particularly in the integration of SAP's border policing into the BMA. The BMA was formally established as a Schedule 3A public entity on the 1st of April 2023, and the transfer of key functions, staff, budgets, and assets from all the other entities was supposed to be completed by that date. So it has been 2 years and 8 months since SAP's border functions were supposed to be transferred to the BMA. Now, while South Africans across the board are crying out for more border security, Minister Kachalia is silent, secure in comfort in his office, while these SAP's border officials duplicate the work of existing BMA officials instead of increasing its effectiveness. So once our BMA has been fully capacitated and our passport integrity restored, we will be in a position to negotiate reciprocal visa-free travel arrangements based not on politics, but on mutual confidence in security and governance. Now, some of this debate will argue that we should impose strict visa entry requirements on Western countries that impose them on us, that we should meet restriction with restriction. Honourable members, let's be clear. A decrease in tourism revenue would result in a fall in foreign investment, while also fueling a downturn in job creation. A tour group cancelling their trip to Cape Town or Durban will not hurt London or Washington. They will hurt the tour guide in Soweto, the waitress at a waterfront restaurant, and a family-run guest house in Durban. Every year, millions of tourists from these countries visit South Africa. They bring billions of rands into our economy. They support hundreds of thousands of jobs in tourism, hospitality, and transport. If you make it harder for them to come here, they will simply go elsewhere. Last year, 2 children under the age of 5 died every single day in our public hospitals from malnutrition-related causes. That is the true crisis in our nation, not whether we can make Western diplomats queue longer for visas, but whether we can grow our economy, create jobs, and feed our children. Our goal must be to attract more visitors, not to discourage them. We will not achieve that by closing our doors. We will achieve it by building trust, by fighting corruption, by restoring the credibility of our institutions, and by positioning South Africa as an open, secure, and competitive country to travel, trade, and invest in. We are already on this path. Thanks to Deputy Minister Ashur Sarapin's work in the National Treasury and the cooperation of our financial institutions, South Africa has been removed from the FATF grey list, a major milestone that has restored confidence in our financial system. Now, with the reforms underway at Home Affairs under Minister Schreiber, we are doing the same for our identity, passport, and visa systems. A trusted biometric ID, a department where integrity replaces corruption, a secure passport. So let us rebuild the credibility of the South African passport, and when that trust is restored, the doors of the world will open to our citizens, not through threats or retaliation, but through mutual respect and confidence. That is how we protect our sovereignty, grow our economy, and build a nation where no child dies from hunger while we debate who gets a visa queue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the ANC, Honourable Mudisi Mupia. You may take the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. As we approach the conclusion on this important debate, It is essential that we elevate our discussion from the immediate motion before us to the broader landscape in which visa policy operates. Mobility has become one of the defining issues of contemporary international relations. It sits at the intersection of security, trade, human capital, geopolitics, and global governance. How South Africa navigates this terrain will influence not only the experience of our citizens abroad, but also our standing as a reliable partner in the international system. Our task today is not to accept or reject a prescription, but to reflect carefully on the overall direction of our foreign policy, our economic priorities, our regional obligations, and the tools available to us to pursue fairness with a global mobility regime that is often uneven. It is a moment for sober judgment, not for rhetoric, not for confrontation, but for a principled statecraft. Honorable members, the debate has highlighted one consistent theme. South Africa operates in an interdependent world where no policy decision exists in isolation. Visa regimes, especially those involving major Western states, carry implications far beyond border control. They influence investment sentiment, student exchanges, tourism flows, scientific partnerships, and diplomatic cooperations. For this reason, the principle of proportionality must be at the center of any review. We must be clear, honorable members. Reciprocity is a recognized norm in international relations, but it is not an automatic reflex. It is one instrument amongst many. The strategic question is not whether we have the right to pursue parity, but whether doing so in any particular instance advances or undermines our broader objectives. This requires assessment, consultation, and diplomatic engagement rather than a unilateral or symbolic action. The experience with our own immigration reforms provides important guidance. We have seen how administrative decisions, even when well-intentioned, can produce unintended economic consequences. The example raised earlier regarding the 2015 unabridged birth certificate requirement is a stark reminder of this. Although introduced for legitimate reasons, it resulted in a measurable decline in tourist arrivals from key markets and placed unnecessary strain on airlines, families, and the hospitality sector. This episode underscores why any proposed change to our visa posture, whether tightening, loosening, or reciprocating, must be preceded by extensive analysis and stakeholder consultation. Honorable members, another issue that must guide our thinking in South Africa's role in Africa. Our foreign policy positions us as a champion of continental integration. We have committed ourselves to facilitating the free movement of people, goods, and services under the African Continental Free Trade Area, to supporting a single African air market, and to strengthening our regional development community. These commitments require consistency. We gain strategic advantage when other African states see South Africa as a bridge, as a hub, and a partner that upholds openness. Any deliberate expansion of visa restrictions must therefore be managed in a manner that does not send a signal of inwardness or undermine the spirit of African mobility that we advocate. Similarly, our bilateral relationships with major global players cannot be viewed narrowly. Mobility arrangements are rarely isolated decisions. They are deeply rooted in political, economic, and security partnerships. Where South Africans face onerous visa requirements abroad, this should indeed be addressed firmly, but in a guided manner, beginning with diplomatic dialogue, advancing to technical negotiations, and drawing on multilateral and regional frameworks where appropriate. The international system offers many tools before reciprocal measures are even considered. Fairness is an essential part of this debate, but fairness is best achieved through diplomacy anchored in clarity, evidence, and consistency. If we are to consider visa parity measures, they must be based on the specific circumstances of each bilateral relationship. Some Western states maintain visa restrictions due to historical administrative frameworks, others due to domestic political debates, others due to risk profiling. These factors are neither uniform nor permanent. A one-size-fits-all response would not be strategic. The question must always be, what outcome are we seeking? If the goal is to secure better treatment for South African travelers abroad, then our approach must be one that persuades and negotiates, not one that risks economic loss or diplomatic friction without guarantee of reciprocal benefit. States often adjust visa regimes after structured engagements, data-driven requests, and a demonstration of secure administrative system. That is a path we can pursue with confidence. We must also acknowledge that global mobility norms are evolving. The world is witnessing new forms of digital visas, multi-country travel waivers, regional mobility accords, and risk-based entry systems that are replacing older, more rigid models. South Africa must be part of this evolution. By strengthening our own visa processing capacity, enhancing digital system, improving turnaround times, and aligning with emerging global best practices, we position ourselves to negotiate from a point of administrative strength rather than frustration. Another theme emerging from this debate is the need for a whole-of-government approach. Visa policy touches on foreign affairs, home affairs, tourism, investment, promotion, security, and higher education. Decisions taken in isolation by one area of government can create friction in another. A structured interdepartmental review of South Africa's global mobility posture, supported by data, scenario planning, and international benchmarking, would allow us to consider reciprocity in a more strategic and less reactive manner. Importantly, the review should involve not only government, but industry stakeholders, tourism bodies, universities, airlines, chambers of commerce, and investor networks. These are the sectors that feel the impact of mobility decisions most directly, and their insights will ensure that any policy adjustments protects both South Africa's global influence and its economic trajectory.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. Unfortunately, your time has expired.
Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you very much. The last speaker for this debate will once again be from the MK, Honourable Dr. Litchfield Chabalala. You may close first. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you to all the parties that see the sanity of restoring dignity to our citizens who are supporting this motion. I did not expect the DA to be bothered that ordinary Africans came to Cairo in 2.5 years are losing over R1 billion in unrefunded denied visa application fees because, as Honourable Kwangwa correctly pointed out, I mean, they carry dual citizenship. And even where they do apply for visas to these countries, their white skin color speaks for them. So they are not subjected to the racism that ordinary South Africans are subjected to. As for the African National Congress, I don't know what to say to you. I never thought I'd live to see a day where you are supporting Western Europe, former slave traders, former colonizers, imposing visas on us while you're not reciprocating. But at the same time, you have imposed visa restrictions on many African countries. You know, in the last 6 years, truly ANC, your Africanness has been on life support. Sadly, we are the tablet to take you out of that life support as the MK party. You can't see it because you are surrounded by the OECD, by the G20, and all this whiteness that's obstructing you to see how far you have fallen. Restore yourselves to the former selves of who you are. you are telling us that SWAPO is doing better than you. Who told you that imposing visa will cut people from coming into your country? I was in Burkina Faso. White people are still coming into Burkina Faso. They are paying for the visa. White people are still going to Namibia. Europeans are going there. They are paying for the visa. Why do you think they are so special that when you apply the visa, they will suddenly not come to South Africa? Just get out of your slumber, ANC, and restore the dignity of our people. And vote MK, because it's very clear the GNU is not going to do it for you South Africans. Vote for MK. We will make sure we reciprocate to all these countries that treat us racistly. Thank you, Chair. It was my timer telling me my 2 minutes is up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That concludes the debate on this motion. Honourable members are reminded that a decision will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. The last item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of Honourable KJ Mayimela on strengthening ongoing initiatives to improve reading and numeracy ability of learners in public schools. I will now hand over to the Honourable Mayimela. You may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I will be taking the debate on behalf of Honourable Mayimela. Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, today's debate on strengthening ongoing initiatives to improve the reading and learning of learners in public schools invites us to reflect honestly, act decisively, and recommit ourselves to the historic mission of transforming education as the foundation of a just, equitable, and prosperous society. Honourable members, the ANC has always affirmed education as the apex priority of national development. From the earliest formulations of the Freedom Charter, our movement declared unequivocally that the doors of learning and culture shall be opened. This was not a slogan, honourable members. It was a revolutionary commitment to dismantle apartheid's machinery of exclusion and to build an education system that empowers every child regardless of race, class, or geography. The Constitution of the Republic in Section 29 affirms the right of everyone to basic education. This right is immediately realizable precisely because the democratic state recognizes education as both a transformation tool and the engine of empowerment for generations to come. Today, as we focus on reading and learning outcomes, we reaffirm that literacy is not merely an academic skill. Reading proficiency is a gateway to equality, economic participation, and national development. A child who reads with understanding is a child who can learn, reason, innovate, and fully engage in the democratic and economic life of our nation. Literacy is therefore central to the broader project of building a capable, inclusive, and competitive South Africa. Honourable South Africans, fellow South Africans, it is essential that we confront the data honestly. The progress in international reading literacy study results and similar assessments by the Department of Basic Education have highlighted deep challenges in reading comprehension among our learners. These outcomes must be understood within their context. Firstly, the COVID-19 pandemic caused unprecedented disruptions. Learners in the foundation phase who rely on consistent contact learning, reading support, and guided classroom interaction lost significant instructional time. Numerous studies confirm that early grade learning loss was more severe in poorer communities, widening existing gaps. Secondly, these literacy outcomes must be viewed through the lens of persistent historical inequities in education. The apartheid legacy, unequal school infrastructure, uneven teacher distribution, impoverished communities, and fragmented schooling systems continues to shape the terrain of teaching and learning. However, honourable members, the ANC-led government has never shied away from confronting these systemic challenges head-on. What is required now is intensification, acceleration, and coherence across all literacy initiatives. If we are to improve reading and learning outcomes, we must address the resource disparities that undermine teaching and learning. This includes ensuring that every school has adequate textbooks, reading material, libraries, and access to digital technologies. We must also acknowledge the shortage of teachers, recruitment and training, and retention of the retention of qualified educators also remains essential. Honourable members, the government has made significant investments in resourcing our schools, but unevenness persists, particularly in rural and township communities. Strengthening literacy outcomes requires targeted resource allocation, stronger district-level support, and clear accountability mechanisms for ensuring that materials reach schools timelessly. The ANC has long recognized that the foundation for learning is laid before a child enters grade 1. Early childhood development is not a peripheral service. It is critical for cognitive development, language acquisition, and the social foundations that support lifelong learning. The relocation of ECD to the Department of Basic Education is a strategic victory for integrated planning. It allows for curriculum alignment, better monitoring, and creates support from birth to the foundation phase. Strengthening ECD is therefore indispensable for improving reading readiness and ensuring that learners acquire the cognitive tools necessary for comprehension, reasoning, and expression. Honorable members, numerous global studies and our own experiences affirm that children learn to read and understand better when taught in their mother tongue during the early phases, with English or Afrikaans introduced gradually as additional languages. Our mother tongue-based bilingual education pilot projects in the provinces such as Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal have showed positive outcomes on improved reading comprehension, stronger cognitive development, increased learner confidence, and better transition from learning to reading to learning. These successes are a testament to the importance of ground literacy in the languages that children speak, understand, and use every day. However, we must acknowledge challenges. In multilingual provinces like the Western Cape and Gauteng, there remains a strong bias towards English-only instruction, often at the expense of African languages. This is not aligned with educational research, constitutional language rights, or the broader goals of transformation. We must work with provincial departments, communities, and school governing bodies to ensure that language policy supports and does not undermine learning. A strong literacy system requires strong teachers. We must continue to invest in professional development, including strengthening foundation phase literacy training, providing ongoing in-service development, supporting schools through district curriculum specialists, and expanding specialist teacher training for African languages. The Funza Lushaka Bursary Scheme plays a vital role in building this pipeline. This program must continue to prioritize teachers who specialize in African languages, reading instruction, and early grade literacy, because this is where the greatest impact is achieved. Continuous professional development is not optional, it is essential. Teachers must be supported with training on evidence-based reading, pedagogies, and early intervention strategies and multilingual literacy approaches. Fellow South Africans, the recently passed Basic Education Laws Amendment, the Bella Act, is a milestone in strengthening multilingual literacy and preserving our indigenous languages. By advancing multilingualism, the Bella Act supports both literacy development and cultural identity. It positions language not as a barrier, but as a resource for learning and national cohesion. Improving reading and learning outcomes requires effective accountability mechanisms. The roles of the Department of Basic Education, provincial education departments, districts, and school governing bodies must be aligned and strengthened. The DPE must ensure rigorous national assessments, monitor provincial performance, and provide strategic oversight. The provincial departments, on the other hand, must allocate resources fairly, recruit educators effectively, and support districts to provide strong curriculum guidance. The school governing bodies, on the other hand, as a community governance structures, must champion mother tongue instruction, monitor availability of learning materials, and support teachers in building cultures of reading in schools. A strengthened accountability framework ensures that literacy targets are not aspirational, they are achievable, measurable, and enforceable. Furthermore, honorable members, improving reading and learning outcomes is not the responsibility of the education sector alone. It is a societal mission, because education is a societal matter. It is a societal mission, one that involves parents, communities, civil society, business, and all spheres of government. The ANC remains unwavering in its commitment to building a transformative education system that opens doors of opportunity for every child. Strengthening literacy is not only about improving test scores, it is about shaping citizens who can participate meaningfully in democracy and who can innovate, who can lead, and who can create a future for themselves and secure the South Africa we need in the future. Let us therefore unite behind the call to reinforce ongoing initiatives and address systemic challenges, invest in our teachers, expand multilingualism, and give every learner the foundational tools they need to learn, grow, and succeed, and thrive in our society. This lays the foundation for learners to to reach the pinnacles they should be reaching. As the ANC, we reaffirm that education remains the apex priority. Literacy remains the heartbeat of transformation, and our children remain the center of our national project, which will secure the future that they deserve. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from MK. It will be Honourable Mkhize. You may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Kaites. Honorable Chair and members of this House, Umkhonto weSizwe reminds everyone that education is the most powerful liberation tool in the hands of the oppressed, particularly in the South African context, where education was used as a weapon to brainwash, polarize, and prepare the Africans to serve white supremacy. It is for this reason Steve Biko once said, "The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." The same point is made by Frantz Fanon in his Black Skin, White Mask work. After observing the depressive, self-dissociative, self-hating, assimilative, and self-doubting behaviors amongst the Black oppressed, he framed these as outcomes of colonialism, which deprived the Africans everything they are and possess. This case is also articulated by Paulo Freire, the Brazilian scholar whose pedagogy of the oppressed work promotes reflection on social realities to create critical awareness needed for meaningful social transformation. Chair, as articulated, effective education only comes from critical reflection on lived social realities and imagined future outlook. Thus, it is central nerve of liberation and social transformation. Therefore, improving the reading and learning with the learners requires and depend on our ability to critically reflect and respond to social realities affecting their pragmatic learning abilities, to effectively stimulate their sense of creative imagination. Chair, as established above, we cannot facilitate proper reading and learning without transforming the horrible schooling conditions affecting the learners, particularly in the neglected rural, farm, and township communities. Hence, the ongoing initiatives on reading and learning in public schools are fruitless and wasteful. Similar to any other program or initiative by the Department of Basic Education in South Africa, they are all fruitless and wasteful due to the current dilapidated state of school infrastructure, maladministration, incompetent planning, poor monitoring, and lack of political will to enforce accountability with ANC and Democratic Alliance officials. Mphathi sihlalo othembekileyo, zizofunda kanjani izingane zethu uphahla luwaphezu kwazo? Amawindi nezicapha kuyizikhe veza, sigejinywa ziyimpethu ema-toilet emigodi, indle intante emagcekeni ezikoleni zabamnyama emalokishini. Abantwana bazizwa bengaphephile ngenxa yokufadabala kohlelo lwezokuthutha nokungabiyela kwezikole zabo. Izingane azikwazi ukufunda zilambile ngenxa yokuthi izikhuluzi ka-ANC nezintombi zazo sebeyintshontshile imali yokudla kwabo. Izikole zabansundu azinazo ingqolobane zolwazi. Nikhuluma ngezobuchwepheshe ezitholakala ezikoleni zasemadolobheni kuphela. Kufuneka othisha abanele abazofundisa lezi zingane. Abekho othisha ngoba navala isibonelelo sokusebenza emakhaya. Ekubeni othisha bafelwa izimoto zabo ngenxa yemigwaqo emihumbe. Othisha kumele nabo bephuze nezinkomo bafike izimpethu. Niphoqa ukuthi emakhaya, emalokishini nasemapulazini kube into emukelekile ukuthi azikho izinsiza zokusebenza nezokufunda. Inqwaba yezingane zesikole zisawela imifula, zingamula amahlathi nemigelekede. Muchaviseki ningeshikoti xikwembu xitaniba. Zifanele kubulabula lexi leswaku bantu bativa tinyiso. Honorable Chair, our people must be told the truth, nothing but the truth. Our kids are being sexually violated in public schools and thereafter be forced to share the same environment with perpetrators, while reported cases take longer to be resolved. DPE, South African Council of Educators, and Education Labor Relations Council jointly indicated that about 61.3% of cases remain endlessly investigated. However, there's no clear plan to remove the backlog of cases. Our experiences in Parliament and in committees must be known by the people who have entrusted Umkhonto weSizwe Party with powers and responsibilities to represent and serve them. Chair, the GNU political combo is dysfunctional. Fact is, this ANC-led government has given up to the challenges facing the people today. It has created a monster of development failures it cannot face today. It has produced immoral, self-serving government officials who now don't even know how to stop looting the resources of the people. Now they are fully automatic robots who don't know how to serve the people, but well equipped in using variety of looting methods and techniques for self-enrichment. Hence, the public schools are going through a state of chronic collapse, just like any other public institution. The nation is bleeding, Chair. Umkhonto weSizwe Party is trying to help in the various communities, but it has become very hard to listen for the people entrusted with powers to enforce accountability. They too have realized that the damage is now very gigantic to reverse. Today, DPE fears facing monstrous infrastructure backlog. Umkhonto weSizwe Party has called for proper baseline assessment on how many schools need to be built, repaired, fenced, equipped with water and flushing toilets, supplied with educators, supported with libraries, scholar transport and national school nutrition program. Without libraries and with libraries but empty shelves. Chair, the letter requesting these baselines from the Democratic Alliance the DPE minister was sent on the 8th of October 2025, but still, there is no response. Evidently, we're dealing with the careless and irresponsive government. The Auditor General submitted countless unqualified audit opinions with findings to DPE, pointing out gross underperformance across 5 compliance areas. Moreover, the AG points neglect of audit recommendation and sheer disregard of accountability by the affected officials. As a result, the AG reports about 67% in compliance with legislative financial management controls and 79 million rands lost on irregular expenditure for the period of 2023-24 to 24-25. In the same period, fruitless and wasteful expenditure has grown from 9 million to whopping 60 million rands. Now the closing balance on irregular expenditure is 6.1 billion rand, while the closing balance on fruitless and wasteful expenditure is at 296 million rand. Only Sangomas can explain why this has not received media attention with all the cameras in our committee rooms. The AG also reported poor budget prioritization and establishment of proper performance baseline needed to establish and track program outcomes in the annual performance plans. This makes it very difficult to track pedagogical outcomes aligned to the financial investments made. Chair, this speaks to the heart of failing initiatives to improve reading and learning. Furthermore, the AG made findings about poor prioritization of schools in the rural, farm, and township communities. All the above were also reported by the Financial and Fiscal Commission, Commission for Gender Equality, some of DPE reports, and the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies. Truth now, not tomorrow. Let us face our realities, understanding that we have only 2 choices, which are 1, picking up the MKP spear to fix this country, or 2, let this country continue to suffer from the ANC endemic to mamina corruption, incompetence, lack of political will to serve the black people in particular. Honorable Chair, Umkhonto weSizwe Party calls for thorough follow-up on 1, Hawk's investigation into lost digital gadget in Mpumalanga, the 330 million rand IT scandal in Eastern Cape, as reported by the Sunday Times last year. We received allegation that high-ranking officials implicated have been promoted to the DPE National Office. The National School Nutrition Program scandal allegedly involving Education MEC in KZN. We are aware about the suffering of black people who are flood victims in Durban, currently sheltered in Crystal Valley and Fletcherny residences, amongst others, whose learners have no scholar transport services and access to special schools. We know about the learners who got expelled from school in Northern Cape because the Department of Military Veterans has not made the required payments. Umkhonto weSizwe Party calls for immediate action by the DPE Minister and HODs, the KZN Premier, the KZN DPE MEC, and KZN Department of Human Settlement MEC. The MKP stands ready to lead the black oppressed in pursuit of our social and economic transformation. Sihole Msholozi. Mandla. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the ANC, Honourable Magagula. Is Honourable Magagula on the platform? Is there another speaker from the ANC? They will be speaking on behalf of Honourable Magagula. If not, we'll come back to the ANC. Let's go to the DA, Honourable D. van der Walt. Honourable van der Walt, are you on the platform?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes. Chairperson, the evidence by the 2021 Progress in International Reading and Literacy Studies polls, the Southern and Eastern Consortium for Monitoring Educational Quality, the Trends in International Maths and Science Studies, TIMS, and the South African Systemic Evaluation SACE on the quality of education last year prove that learners in the foundation phase is in desperate need of support and quality education. Most recently, the Funda Mpumeleli National Survey Funds tells a story we can no longer ignore. Our children are not learning to read with the proficiency required for success, and if a child cannot read for meaning by the age 10, every year that follows is an uphill battle. The TIMS study shows that only 41% of grade 5 learners achieve the minimum proficiency in maths. The Pearl study tells us also bad news, that only 19% of grade 5 learners can read at the required level, and that 81% of grade 4s cannot read for meaning at all. The Southern and Eastern Consortium for Monitoring Educational Quality reinforces this concern, as 35.5% grade 6 learners could not pass even the most basic reading for meaning level, and 43.6% had only basic numeracy, and only 16.7% were mathematically competent. Even more concerning is the regression in teacher numeracy scores, dropping from number 780 to 759. And we know that teachers are the backbone of our education system, and these results highlight the scale of support that is needed. TIMS further shows that 75% of grade 5 learners barely grasp basic maths concepts. Almost half fail to meet the low science benchmark. And in grade 9, 35% fall below even the very most basic maths understanding. Our own South African systemic evaluation confirms the same pattern, as only 20% of grade 3 learners read at the required level, only 34% reach the expected math skills, and the majority of learners, grade 3, 6, and 9, are still developing or constructing at grade level knowledge. Chairperson, this paints a sobering picture, but it's not a picture without hope. On the 10th of November this year, Minister Sifiwe Garubi took one of the most significant steps towards improving literacy in a generation. She launched the Funda Mpumeleli National Survey, FUNS, a landmark initiative assessing 28,000 learners over 710 schools in all our 11 languages, providing the first truly national language-specific early grade reading benchmarks in our democratic era. And the findings are crucial, as only 31% of grade 1 learners reach the benchmark of 40 correct letter sounds per minute. Just over 30% of grades 2 and 3 met fluency standards, and 15% of grade 3 learners still cannot read a single word. But that is why the Minister's leadership matters. She has chosen transparency, evidence-based planning, and targeted intervention across system, district, and classroom levels. She's been clear, we cannot fix what we cannot measure. She understands also the importance that investing more funding into the foundation phase will lead to improved education outcomes as learners move up. Funds now enable South Africa to 1. Track progress in all languages nationally and provincially. 2. Equip districts and schools with appropriate language diagnostic assessments. And 3. Provide teachers with practical tools to identify any learners at risk early and deliver targeted remediation. This is a decisive break from the past decade of policy drift. Minister also has the minister's broader strategy is equally noteworthy. A 5-pillar approach addresses the full spectrum of learning. 1. Early childhood development in the first 2,000 days, because cognitive deficits begin long before grade 1. 2. Foundational skills literacy and numeracy by grade 4. No child should advance without mastering the basics. Teacher training must be practical, hands-on and evidence-based, not theory for its own sake. 4. School infrastructure, dignity, safety, accessibility. A child cannot learn in an unsafe or collapsing classroom. 5. Inclusive education, ensuring children with disabilities are never left behind. More important, the FUNS results have already shaped real interventions, a commitment to coherent, consistent teacher training programs, focusing on early reading fluency and diagnostic skills, the development of language-specific reading guidance, recognizing also that isiXhosa, Sepedi, Afrikaans, Setswana require different instructional approaches, and a renewed focus on accountability and support, particularly in under-resourced schools, where the gap between quintile 1 to 3 and quintile 5 schools remains unacceptably wide. We must be frank, poverty remains the greatest barrier to learning. Children in quintile 5 schools are twice as likely to reach reading benchmarks. Girls across several languages are twice as likely to meet reading fluency standards as boys. These disparities highlight why strengthening foundational learning is not only an education priority, it is an absolute equity imperative. But success will require all of us, Chairperson, Parliament, provinces, districts, teachers, parents, to act with urgency. If we fail to strengthen foundational literacy and numeracy, the consequences are clear. Higher dropout rates, rising unemployment, and another generation locked out of opportunity. Let us commit today that
Honourable Member, thank you. Your time has expired.
Remain unable for reading with meaning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go back to the ANC. Honourable Magagula, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I please take the speech for Honourable Magagula?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and members. Today we gather to reflect on one of the most fundamental drivers of human development, the ability to read, to comprehend, and to imagine possibilities beyond one's immediate environment. Reading is not simply a classroom exercise. It is the foundation of participation in economic life, in democracy, and in building an informed and empowered society. Honourable members, literacy is not achieved through schooling alone. It is shaped by the home, the community, and the broader social environment in which a child grows. For us to meaningfully improve learning outcomes, we must deliberately expand our interventions beyond the schooling gates and into the daily lives of families. It begins from birth. Research is consistent. The first 1,000 days of a child's life are crucial for brain development. A child who is spoken to, sung to, and stimulated at home builds the neutral foundation for language and comprehension long before entering grade R. This is why the role of parents and caregivers is not optional, rather foundational. We therefore need to strengthen parental involvement programs, ensuring that parents understand that reading does not have to be complicated. Simple daily practices, telling stories, showing pictures, naming objects around the house, and reading short books can transform a child's readiness for school. Honorable members, too many households, especially in poor communities, lack reading materials. The cost of books is a barrier. Household literacy levels can also limit confidence. This means our responses must be systematic, expanding the distribution of free early childhood reading packs to pregnant mothers and parents of newborns, embedding reading education in parenting workshops connected to clinics, ECD centers, and community organizations, partnering with NGOs that specialize in family literacy, ensuring that every parent, whether literate or semi-literate, has the tools to support their child. A nation that reads begins with families that read. Reading must be visible, accessible, and celebrated in every community. Many children have no quiet place to read at home. Some have no books at all. Community-based programs can bridge this gap. We must therefore intensify support for reading clubs, after-school homework centers, and weekend academies that provide safe, structured spaces for learners to read for pleasure, practice comprehension, and receive guidance. The ANC's-led government, together with provincial departments, should expand, 1, the provision of mobile libraries and book boxes to underserved communities. 2, partnerships with the municipality libraries, ensuring they remain open after hours and on weekends. 3, support for NGOs that run Saturday reading academies in townships and rural villages. 4, incentivize for local businesses and donors to support community reading hubs. Honorable members, reading cannot be restricted to the classroom timetable. The more opportunities a child has to read outside the school, the more confident and fluent they become. Our goal must be to surround our learners with spaces that welcome reading before school, after school, and throughout the weekend. House Chair, one of the critical challenges in our literacy landscape is that many learners do not see themselves in the stories they read. Books that reflect a child's culture, language, identity, and daily realities make reading more meaningful and engaging. We must therefore accelerate the production of curricular-relevant and multilingual reading materials, especially in African languages, and this includes supporting local authors, especially young and emerging writers, investing in children's literature that reflects South African context, characters, and histories, expanding translation and publications initiatives to ensure that every school has access to high-quality books in all official languages. We must confront the uncomfortable reality children cannot learn when they are hungry, unsafe, and burdened by the effects of poverty. If we are serious about building a reading nation, then our literacy strategy must address the broader conditions that shape a child's ability to learn. Hunger remains one of the biggest barriers. The National Schooling Nutrition Program is a lifeline, yet many children still arrive at school without breakfast. A hungry child cannot concentrate, let alone engage with complex text. Strengthening school nutrition, exploring breakfast programs, and supporting community food gardens must be part of our literacy agenda. Secondly, violence, whether at home, in the community, or in schools, destroys a child's sense of safety. Violence is an educational issue. Children who fear walking to school, who face bullying, or who witness crime struggle to focus in classrooms. Strengthening safety protocols, improving policing around schools, and responding to gender-based violence must therefore form part of our reading culture strategy. Transport challenges also affect attendance, and particularly learners who walk long distance arrive tired. They miss out on morning reading sessions, and continuity is broken. Reliable scholar transport must be prioritized in rural areas. Members, poverty is not separate from education. It shapes educational outcomes directly. Our task is therefore not only to promote reading, but to fight the conditions that block reading. Finally, as we deepen this national effort, we must ensure that no child is left behind. Learners with disabilities continue to face barriers in accessing reading materials, inclusive instruction. We must strengthen the provision of braille books and tactile resources for learners who are blind or visually impaired, assistive technologies, including screen reading software and adapted devices, South African Sign Language materials for deaf learners, simplified access text for learners with intellectual disabilities, training and support for teachers to implement inclusive reading strategies in classrooms and beyond. Honorable Chair, inclusion is not charity, it is a constitutional duty. A reading culture that does not embrace all learners is not a culture at all. In conclusion, building a culture of reading beyond the classroom is not a program. It is a national movement. It requires parents who tell stories, communities that open their doors, writers who create with pride, and a state that removes the barriers of poverty and inequality. The ANC has always affirmed educators as the ladder to freedom and development. Our commitment today is to ensure that every child, urban or rural, rich or poor, able-bodied or disabled, has tools to read, to learn, and to rise. Let us build South Africa where books are everywhere, where reading is celebrated, and where every child can dream boldly. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the EFF, Honourable Shikwambana. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable members, when we speak about reading and numeracy, I'm not thinking about statistics. I'm thinking about real children who look like us, who come from the homes we come from, and who carry the hopes of families that sacrifice everything for a better future. I'm thinking about the grade 4 learner from Mpumalanga, whose video went viral on ENCA in 2019, struggling to read a single sentence from a textbook during a classroom interview. That child was not slow, she was failed. I'm thinking about the foundation-phase teacher from Limpopo who broke down in tears during a training led by Funda Wande, realizing that she had been teaching for 12 years without ever being shown how to teach reading properly using phonics. She said, "Now I see why my learners never improve. That is not a teacher's failure, it's a system failure." I'm thinking about the children in the Eastern Cape, documented by Equal Education Ground Up and the Daily Dispatch, who walk up to 80 kilometers to school and learn in classroom without a single library book. How must that child read? How must that child count? How must that child dream? These are not stories from reports. These are lived experiences from our people in Taung, Giyani, Bushbuck Ridge, Mamelodi, Seshiwo, and the villages and townships across our country. These children are bright, curious, and full of potential, but they are overwhelmed by a system that was never designed for them to succeed. A child who cannot read is not failing. The system is failing, but the shame stays with the child. Confusion becomes fear, fear becomes avoidance, and that avoidance closes the doors to mathematics, science, accounting, engineering, medicine, aviation, information technology, and all the high-skilled profession that remains dominated by a minority. Verified findings from the Progress in International Reading Literacy Study of 2023 confirmed that 81% of the grade 4 learners in South Africa cannot read for meaning. That is not a small crisis, it is a national emergency. The early grade reading study conducted by the Department of Basic Education with the Research on Socio-Economic Policy Unit at Stellenbosch University found that many teachers were not adequately trained to teach early grade readings. This is why we see children advancing through grades without foundational skills. Yet research from Funda Wande, the University of Cape Town School of Economics and randomized control trials shows that when teachers receive proper training, literacy improves dramatically within months. So this crisis is not a mystery. The solution exists. The political will does not. Strengthening reading and numeracy must be an urgent national program, not a slogan. It must start with retraining every foundation-phase teacher in a proper reading and numeracy instruction, not a workshop, not a pamphlet, real training with real support. Every school must have a functional reading space. If government cannot build libraries, then convert empty classrooms or unused buildings. Just give children books in languages they understand. Daily reading time must be compulsory. 10 minutes a day, every day in every classroom. That alone has been proven to change outcomes. Numeracy must be taught using real objects, games, and everyday example, not meaningless chalkboard theory in overcrowded classrooms. Stronger mother tongue instruction must be reinstated. Children gain confidence, comprehension, and speed when they learn in the language they speak at home. This is verified, settled research across the world. Communities must be mobilized, reading clubs, after school programs, volunteer story hours, church-based literacy at evening. We must make reading part of village and township lifestyle again. Honorable members, improving reading and numeracy is not just education reform, it is economic liberation. It is how we prepare black children to enter and dominate the sector monopolized by minorities: engineering, medicine, auditing, metallurgy, aviation, data science, and technology. When a child reads confidently, they dream differently. When they count confidently, they approach the world differently. Reading and numeracy build dignity, confidence, and ambition. If we want real transformation, it starts in grade 1 with a child holding a book they can understand, counting with confidence, and believing that they belong to the profession that built nation. Let us build South Africa where a child in Taung reads with the same confidence as a child in Sandton, where a child in Guyana and a child in Durban North share the same chances, not the same excuses. When we fix the foundation, we fix the future. And fixing reading and numeracy is how we break generational inequality once and for all. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the IFP, Honourable Ngubisi. You may speak.
Good day, sir, and Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. South Africa continues to face profound challenge in literacy and numeracy outcomes, particularly in the foundation phase. Several government programs aim to address these issues, but the persistence of poor results demonstrate the need for strengthened implementation, sustained resources, and improved accountability mechanisms. The role of the state is to ensure equal access to educational opportunities by establishing an enabling environment in terms of skills and resources. The government initiatives such as early grade reading program, the primary school reading improvement program, and the annual provisioning of workbooks have created a foundation for progress. Teacher coaching pilots have recorded pockets of success. However, these initiatives remain limited in scale, inconsistent across the provinces, and hindered by uneven teacher capacity and weak school management. To address this administration must emphasize teaching competence, the cornerstone of literacy and numeracy, to improve. No reform, however well designed, can succeed without educators who possess a strong subject knowledge and ability to effectively teach reading and mathematics. Continuous professional development must therefore be intensified with a shift towards practical in-classroom support rather than the theoretical workshops. Revitalization teaching training colleges or similar institution could help to ensure that a new educators enter the system already equipped with the specialized competences and literacy and numeracy pedagogy. We must underscore, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, the importance of early intervention as the foundation phase determined for learners' academic path. Regular reading assessments, transparent reporting of results, and swift targeted intervention must become a standard practice. Evidence-based numeracy numeracy methodology, supported by structured lesson plans and adequately trained subject advisors, are essential for ensuring that learners acquired fundamental skills early in the school career. Overcrowded classrooms, insufficient learning material, and weak school leadership undermine the progress. Strengthening the capacity of school management teams, holding teams accountable for literacy and numeracy outcome must be our core initiatives. Honorable Chair, provinces should have the autonomy and support necessary to implement interventions effectively, while their departments must be held responsible for ensuring that the resources reach classroom timelessly. Digital tools can provide individualized learning pathways, real-time assessment, and support for both learner and teachers. However, technology must complement, not replace, core teaching practices, and must be deployed in a way that is sensitive to a realize of under-resourced schools. Ultimately, the IFP, Honourable Chair, emphasizes the improving literacy and numeracy is not optional but essential to South African long-term development. Without firm foundation skills, learners struggle throughout their schooling, limiting their ability to participate meaningfully in the economy. In conclusion, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Unfortunately, your time has expired.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be from the PA, Honourable Basson. You may have the floor.
That is what a child sounds like without proper reading, without proper structure of what words on a page means. Today I'm sitting in this house and I'm listening to every speaker giving amazing ideas on how we can strengthen our education system. But let us look at the reality. When I drop my child off at school, I drop him off at a building that's highly maintained, excellent condition. I drive on a tar road. At break time, he uses a bathroom with flashing water. At break time, he can go to a cafeteria and purchase food. But when I go to an outreach in a township, I drive into a schoolyard that has no windows, 6 children sitting at one desk, hardly any books, no papers. That is the reality we are facing. That is the truth. We lower our pass rate to 30%. So 70% is what a child doesn't need to know. So is going to be our future. We need to strengthen. We need to tighten up. We need to look at the imbalances that was caused from apartheid. The ripple effect will stay with us as long as we allow it to. We have rural townships where teachers are faking their education, where teachers have to walk, where children have to walk over sewer to get to school. As the Patriotic Alliance, we say enough is enough. Our children shouldn't sit in classrooms and read words they do not even understand the meaning. Be forced to take maths where they only need 30% to pass. We need to make subjects more approachable, where children can interact. A child that learns with their hands is a child that can remember. A child that looks at a piece of paper and doesn't see scary words is a child that can learn anything. We need to have a look at our education system. Everything we sit in this house and discuss, the future, jobs, income, tourism, how will that ever filter down to our children if we are allowing a generation of 30%? 30% is what our children needs to know, 70% not. But we cannot say up the pass rate, but we do not up the standard. Every year after year in this house, we discuss how are we going to improve education. Every January when children goes to enroll in schools, it's the same problem. Schools are full, classrooms overcrowded, no books, no windows, no bathrooms, no food. When will this talk show end? When will the reality filter down to the ground? As a Patriotic Alliance, we say, enough is enough. Children comes first. They are our future. They are our next generation. In one of those classrooms in the rural heart of the Cape Flats sits our next president. Let us lift our children out of poverty. Let us put our words into reality and let us show our children that books mean something. Yumna Alexander started a night school. She has now 8 night schools where parents get to do matric. Do not give up. Do not stop. Education starts with us. Education starts with our parents. Education starts with every decision we make in this house. Let us not blame the past. Let us learn from the past. Let us make the future better. No child should suffer what the past has done. Every child should benefit what the future can offer. No race left behind. No one should look at a paper and be scared of a word. Enough is enough. Ons baie nie. Baie dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from the Freedom Front Plus, Honourable Boshoff. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The low level of literacy and numeracy is something for which South Africa is famous. South Africa seems to be either the best or the worst at stuff. Best in rugby, worst in education and employment. Let us be clear. There is no problem with the cognitive ability of South African children. The question is, what is wrong in the education system? There are basically two things, the role of unions and the limited use of mother tongue. A specific teachers' union has already been appointed by the Volmink report. They sell posts and shield non-performing teachers from the consequences of their deeds. Now, you can shield the individual staff member from career consequences, but you cannot shield society from the educational consequences. Even worse, what does a child actually learn at school? That hard work is unnecessary if you are well connected. In addition, teachers not in class cannot teach, and time lost cannot be recovered. The other problem, basic problem, is a preferred language of learning and teaching. There is a popular perception that education through medium of English is superior to mother tongue. This is a colonial mentality, if you ever wanted one, on which one could quote Frans Fanon, Paulo Freire, and every other revolutionary educationalist. This is at least as important as the work ethics of teachers. A child discovers the world of science and knowledge in the language of learning and teaching. If you want to prolong a colonial mentality, teach a child in a colonial language. As a kind of concession, children are taught in their own languages until grade 4. However, from the very first day, the children themselves, as well as their parents and the teachers, know that they will soon switch over to English. This means that the school has 4 years to create the required proficiency in English. That influences the attention afforded to a home language as compared to English. From that point on, it's a catch-up game. And then, after this confused learning experience, children are tested for numeracy and literacy in grade 4. The test can just as well be in the child's own language or in English. It doesn't matter. The results will be disheartening as they are. Afrikaners in the early 20th century had a similar experience. They could choose between third-rate Afrikaans schools with unqualified teachers or well-resourced English state schools. Several world-class academics, scientific and commercial minds were honed in the unexpected learning spaces of these Afrikaans schools. What made the difference was determination and confidence, the confidence creating by meeting the world in their own language. Ironically, by 1994, mother tongue education in African languages was in an advanced stage. Learning material in African languages for mathematics and other subjects to matric level had been ready and printed, and then shredded, having become obsolete. I want to bring it closer to ourselves. When a majority of members in this House value their own languages high enough to use it regularly in their speeches, as some of us do, teachers, parents, and children alike will follow suit. Literacy and numeracy tests will show the positive result. However, in this setting, but especially also in settings in the House itself, it seems as if our people don't take their languages seriously. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be from Action SA. That will be Honourable Ngubeni. Honourable Ngubeni, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Let me begin by saying this in following from the previous speaker. Mashaka, I will have a government that cannot teach its children to read has no moral authority to speak of progress. Chairperson, South Africa is not just facing an education crisis, we are living through the greatest betrayal of our democratic promise. A sad fact must be stated ad nauseum. 30 years into freedom, the single biggest tragedy of post-apartheid South Africa is that a black child and, of course, children of color in a public school still cannot read for meaning and cannot do basic numeracy at the level required to change their circumstances. We must say this very plainly. Our education system is manufacturing disadvantage generation after generation, while those responsible hide behind press statements, optimism, and pilot projects that never become real solutions. Today, a grade 4 child who cannot read with understanding is not struggling. They have been failed. A grade 7 learner who cannot do basic calculations is not behind. They have been abandoned. A teenager entering high school, unable to access science, technology, or math, is not unready. The state has stolen their future before it had even had a chance. We cannot build a competitive nation on a foundation as broken as what we have today. Honorable Chairperson and members, government must stop pretending that literacy and numeracy collapse is a mystery. The causes are known, documented, and repeatedly ignored. Teacher absenteeism that is tailored and tolerated, overcrowded classrooms that make early literacy impossible, schools without libraries, reading materials, or proper numeracy tools, a department more committed to defending its image than transforming outcomes. To be clear, Action SA stands for strengthening ongoing initiatives, means ending the culture of excuses. We need evidence-based reading programs implemented nationwide with no more pilots that only benefit a handful of schools. We need teacher training that produces mastery, not attendance registers. We need continuous classroom-level diagnostics so that every child's progress is tracked weekly, not annually, and interventions happen before a child is lost in the system. And we must confront a digital divide that is nothing short of immoral. In a world where children learn from interactive digital content, South African learners are still sharing outdated textbooks or learning with none at all. Technology is not a luxury. It is a new literacy. But without proper connectivity, trained teachers, and maintenance, it becomes another expensive promise instead of a solution. Honorable Chairperson and members, reading and numeracy determine who our children can become. A child who cannot read is locked out of possibility. A child who cannot work with numbers is locked out of the economy. This is not just an education issue, it is a justice issue, it is an economic issue, it is a human dignity issue. Strengthening these initiatives is not optional, Chairperson. It is a single most important investment we can make if South Africa is ever to become a country where birth does not determine destiny. We owe it to our children, and we owe them more than hope. We owe them competence, we owe them urgency, and we owe them the political courage and chutzpah that this government has failed to show for 3 decades and over. After all, and to quote one of the most prolific civil rights activists of our time, Malcolm X, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be from the UDM. Our first call, ACDP. Is there someone from the ACDP on the floor? No. We'll go from there to the UDM. Honorable Kwankwa, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Chair, our school reveal a deeply concerning reality. According to the 2021 Progress in International Reading Literacy Study, 81% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning in any language, up from 78% in 2016. Only 19% of learners read with comprehension. Numeracy performance is equally alarming, with only 6.3% of the 2024 National Senior Certificate cohort earning a quality pass in mathematics, underscoring the depth of the foundational skills deficit. A report by the Equal Education Law Center highlighted the persistent challenges in our education system, noting that 80% of the teachers lack the necessary content knowledge and pedagogical skills to effectively teach the subjects assigned to them. For instance, 79% of grade 6 mathematics teachers are unable to achieve a 60% score on a grade 6-7 level mathematics test. It further warns that almost 45% of primary schools in South Africa function as cognitive wastelands where not a single learner is capable of reading and drawing inferences. This crisis is made worse by structural and systemic barriers. The country has a severe school overcrowding problem. Early grades have high learner-to-teacher ratios. This overcrowding then makes it difficult for teachers to make individualized attention to learners possible. Many schools also lack basic infrastructure like proper classrooms, libraries, laboratories, and computer facilities which are essential for effective literacy and numeracy development. To address these challenges, government must urgently deploy the necessary teachers that are required in order for us to be able to respond to this challenge. This would reduce overcrowding and create conducive learning environment for learners. The Education Assistant Program also requires immediate reform. Unqualified personnel are frequently used as teachers in understaffed schools. This undermines learning outcomes. Only qualified teachers, in our view, should be responsible for instruction. We are of the view that teacher development must also move beyond episodic workshops for educational programs to a more continuous form of practice-based coaching cycles in which facilitators go out to observe lessons, provide feedback, and guide teachers' improvement on a regular basis. Learning materials including workbooks, readers, manipulatives, and the numeracy kits often arrive to schools late, incorrectly.
Honorable member, unfortunately, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call out the names of the next parties to see if they have a speaker on the platform. Rise, do you have a speaker? No, then Bosa? No speaker from Bosa? Okay, ATM? Anyone from ATM? No? Now we'll go on to the ANC. Honorable Govana, you may speak. Thank you. Honorable Govana, are you on the platform? Okay, I'll come back to the ANC. Al Jamal, do we have a speaker from Al Jamal? No. NCC? No speaker. UAT? No speaker. Good? No speaker. The DA, the Minister of Basic Education.
I'm here, Chairperson. If I can be given a second, I didn't realize you would go through all those speakers so quickly.
No, that's fine. I will call the ANC again just to check because they are on the list, but they didn't respond to give you a minute. So let me just check again. ANC, Honorable Govana, are you on the floor? Okay, it doesn't seem that way. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, honourable members. Thank you for the opportunity to engage a matter that lies at the heart of our nation's future, strengthening the reading and learning outcomes of our learners in public schools. Few issues are as urgent, as transformative, or as foundational as ensuring that every child in South Africa, no matter where they are born, can read for meaning and learn with confidence. Reading is not simply one subject among many. It is the gateway through which all other learning becomes possible. When a child can read, they can access mathematics, science, and the broader world of ideas. When they cannot, the impact compounds year after year, limiting their academic progress, shrinking their opportunities, and ultimately undermining their prospects in a rapidly changing economy. Today, we confront a sobering reality. 8 out of 10 10-year-olds in South Africa cannot read for meaning. This is not just an education statistics, it's one of national importance. It is one number that should unite this House because it speaks directly to our collective responsibility to build a capable, competitive, and equitable society. If a child cannot read, they cannot learn. If they cannot learn, they cannot progress. If they cannot progress, they cannot complete schooling, access further opportunities, or contribute meaningfully to our economy. This is why this administration has placed early childhood care and education and early grade reading at the center of our reform agenda. Across all available diagnostic assessments and systemic evaluations, the pattern is clear and is consistent. Early learning deficits widen each academic year. The disparities between quintile 1, 2, 3, and quintiles 4 and 5 remain significant. For many learners, the language of learning and teaching becomes an early learning barrier rather than a bridge. These gaps manifest not only in reading, but in math, science, and in general comprehension. They influence whether learners reach grade 10 prepared, whether they can choose and excel in STEM subjects, whether they can complete the National Senior Certificate with a quality pass. Reading improvement is a system issue. It requires deliberate, systemic instructions aligned to the science of reading. We are and must continue to scale structured early grade reading in programs that provide daily lesson plans, graded readers, explicit phonics instructions, vocabulary and comprehension development. These are being implemented across all provinces, supported by training, coaching, and classroom-based support for teachers. One of our most important levers in expanding access is also expanding access to quality mother tongue-based bilingual education so that learners can build solid early literacy foundations in their mother tongue before transitioning to English. This is aimed at strengthening comprehension, boosting confidence, and improving long-term academic performance. The quality of reading instruction depends on strong teachers. Therefore, we are targeting teacher development as much as possible. We continue to produce sufficient teachers in some phases, but shortages persist in maths, science, and African language foundation phase educators. We are working with the Department of Higher Education to rebalance the pipeline and expand bursaries. Data confirms what we see on the ground. Foundation phase classes are too large. So the post-provisioning model, which has not been reviewed and reformed in over 2 decades, is currently needing to be reformed because it's disproportionate in weighting in the upper grades. We therefore have initiated this reform. Honorable members, to learn to read, children need access to books. Partners and donors have helped deliver over 1,500 school libraries, reading corners with additional reading material. This is supported by the department's updated national catalog, which expands availability of foundation phase material. Infrastructure also matters. Over overcrowding, multi-grade pressures, and inadequate facilities undermine reading development. And so through the Education Infrastructure Grant, we are tackling and prioritizing these classrooms. Members, the latest data shows that adjusted learner departure rates have stabilized around 2% annually, and fewer grade 10 learners are exiting the system prematurely. But we must acknowledge that not every learner is on a linear path to grade 12. Many transition to TVET, community colleges, or private examination pathways. Our goal is clear: to ensure that every learner, regardless of the pathway that they take, has got meaningful skills in literacy and in numeracy. We cannot improve what we do not measure, and that's why the department is strengthening its early grade assessment, which include early reading benchmarks, early literacy numeracy diagnostic tools, the systemic evaluation, and early grade reading assessment. These help teachers identify the learning losses early and intervene before the gaps widen. In recent months, we have set up the National Education and Training Council, South Africa's first national advisory body focused specifically on school education. And this council is role is really targeted at making sure that we've got independent, expert, evidence-formed advice on key drivers of quality in our education system. Reading improvement is no longer a standalone program. It's become the backbone of our efforts to improve the quality of education outcomes. Members, the focus on foundational learning, which covers early childhood care and education, literacy and numeracy in the early primary grades, is not happening in isolation. Recently, IPSA and the G20 meetings reaffirmed that early childhood care and education and early grade reading offers the highest returns of any education reform. South Africa helped to shape these commitments, which fully align with our domestic priorities. So we are following global best practice. At the Banapele summit earlier this year, President Ramaphosa spoke with clarity and humility. He said that government should have started prioritizing early childhood development strong enough. We have not done so strong enough in the past, and we should have started a lot sooner than we have. His words are a powerful reminder that early years cannot be an afterthought. Early years must be the front line of our reform agenda, and they reinforce precisely why this administration is placing early childhood care and education and early grade reading at the heart of the work that we do. When we get the early years right, inequality narrows, high school performance improves, matric outcomes strengthen, employability increases, and young people gain the confidence to find work, create work, and contribute to our society. The future of our nation depends on our children learning to read today. This is how we raise standards meaningfully. This is how we build an education system obsessed with quality, and this is how we serve the children of our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The final speaker for the debate will be from the ANC, Honourable Mayimela.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I will take it on behalf of Honourable Mayimela. Honourable Chairperson, Honourable members, let me start by saying that, some of the remarks by the DA suggest that the progress we are seeing today in the reading and learning outcomes of our learners is a product of the leadership. But it is important that this House and the nation is reminded of the historical truth that the foundation, momentum, and measurable gains that South Africa celebrates today in basic education were built under the leadership, policies, and long-term investment of the African National Congress. Honourable members, the systematic improvement in early grade reading did not begin last year, nor with the new political leadership. It began when the ANC strategic recognition that literacy is the cornerstone of national development, particularly for children in public schools in historically disadvantaged communities. It was the ANC government that introduced the early grade reading program, which is the largest coordinated reading intervention in democratic South Africa, supported by rigorous monitoring and implemented provinces long before this administration were in. We also strengthened teacher development, providing structured learning materials, the CAPS-aligned reading resources, and coaching programs that have contributed significantly to improvements in decoding fluency and comprehension levels. We also established the Foundation for Mother Tongue-based multilingual education, promoting reading in indigenous languages and policy, and invested in billions in South African infrastructure through programs such as the SIDI and SAFE, improving the learning environment and ensuring that schools in rural, township, and farming communities could support literacy development. These gains did not emerge spontaneously. They are the result of strategic continuity, evidence-driven planning, and long-term investment, all under the ANC stewardship. Honorable Chair, let me just conclude by saying that we will not allow any political opportunism to distort the narrative of progress. The ANC remains the architect of the advances we are witnessing today and the champion of continued improvement in reading and learning outcomes. We will continue strengthening this initiative with vision, consistency, and commitment to the people, and ensure that all people and all young people benefit from this. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session. The mini-plenary will now rise. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Cheers.